Hello, my fellow apes and other terrestrials. I'm Tom, and welcome to the 10th episode of our weekly podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about the floods and forest fires that have been ravaging Europe and how we can deal with such an enormous catastrophe as activists. I'm joined today by two of my lovely fellow climate activists, Kato.
Yeah, hi. So as Tom mentioned, I'm Kato. I am a climate activist. I was already on one of your first podcasts, I think. And I study social cultural work in Leuven, which is also where I do most of my activism work.
And on my other side, Dorian.
Well, thanks for having me here, Tom. We were talking about this for a very long time, so I appreciate the invitation. I'm also a climate activist, and I study ecotechnology at the Vives University College in Kortrijk, and that's also the city where I did the most of my climate activism.
Okay, without further ado, let's look into this. So in recent weeks, Europe has been ravaged by various floods and forest fires. If we go over the list, we have seen floods in Belgium, Germany, Austria. Switzerland had its fair share of intense rainfall, which filled up its rivers and lakes. We have seen the London subway fully submerged, or at least partially submerged. And we have seen heavy rainfall in the north of Italy as well. Meanwhile, or at the moment, Sardinia has been on fire, as well as parts of Turkey, where entire farms have been obliterated. Sicily, Greece, the Balkans, southern Spain have all experienced intense heat. In the south of Spain, the mercury reached 45 degrees and was climbing towards 50 at some points. And even in the north of Europe, Lapland, Norway, Finland, and Greenland have all experienced intense heat as well. That is a pretty overwhelming thing to experience. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, it's very overwhelming, as you just said. That was my main takeaway from these last weeks and some events prior to that were heavily discussed in the media. Every time I watched the news, I was incredibly overwhelmed, as in existential dread coming over me and creeping up. And I always got into this headspace of being just like thinking these very, very like catastrophic things, because the events that are happening are quite catastrophic. So then you start thinking, what if this happens and what if this happens? And you can just feel this general like overwhelming, looming climate crisis hanging over your head. And that wasn't fun. But yeah, that's how I experienced it, at least. It was just also a bit of a wake-up call, because this has been like a reality for a lot of people around the world for a long time. While only now these intense catastrophe scale climate catastrophes are only now coming to Europe and to like the westernized world, to say, and it was a bit of like a wake-up call to see how privileged we've been to have been able to like not suffer the main part of the crisis for a long time, but now it's here. And it was a bit just intense, and it opened my eyes for me.
Yeah, this is, we know that increased global warming causes more extreme weather. And this is what we see with 1.1 degrees heating at the moment, which is where we are, as well as 420 parts per million in the atmosphere. Dorian?
Exactly. The observatory at Mauna Loa in Hawaii is measuring the CO2 concentration, but also other greenhouse gases concentration in parts per million. That's why ppm, parts per million. since the 1965. No, 65. So in the middle of the 50s. So that's a very long time that they are measuring the concentration of CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions. And it's pretty terrifying, but not as a unluckily surprise. I mean, scientists some knew the story. Scientists at ExxonMobil calculated in 1977 that that burning fossil fuels will eventually increase greenhouse gas emissions, which causes a man-made, human-made global warming effect. So it's just science that's doing its job. I mean, you can, but it's terrific that the density is becoming faster than ever in human history, because we are seeing concentrations that in the last 12,000 years scientists could compare it to. So it's just out of our mind fucking shit that's happening right now in our atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. What you said, your point about how it's been predicted by science for a really long time is also one of the things that angers me most, because we've known that this would happen, yet now the media coverage about it is very unclimate related, mostly catastrophe related, not like structural enough. And okay, some articles have come out about, a lot of articles have come out about like the climate side of it, but also it's not on the top of everyone's minds that we've been planning for, we should have been planning for this, and we should have been prepared for these kind of catastrophes to come, because we knew they would happen. But I think we've all been, or at least policymakers have been, in some state of denial. Oh, that shit never happens here. We never do that. Yeah.
And even now, we're still not seeing action in any way that is closely, or that closely resembles any form of action taken on the corona pandemic, for example. We're not seeing the same graphs shown every day on the news. We're not seeing, all stops being pulled to start mitigating and adapting to this phenomena. Yet, we see leaders walking through the rubbish and taking in their taking in the environment and shaking hands and saying,
making their press photographs.
Yeah, exactly. And yet still nothing. And it feels like it plays into this larger problem of like, we keep setting goals and targets, and like Greta Thunberg says, yeah, sure, you can set as many goals as you want, but the point is we should be doing as much as possible, as quickly as possible, not, just being climate neutral or achieving net zero emissions in 2050, which, by the way, still just gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees anyway. And it is, like you said, I fully feel that too. It's incredibly infuriating just to continuously see this happen over and over and over again. And even in this space, because a lot of environmental organizations have said in the past, what it takes is one good crisis at home and then they'll see. I don't think so. We have seen a big crisis now. We've kind of already seen big crises in the past, but it doesn't seem like that changes anything. And that is, I think, one, infuriating, two, disappointing, fearful as well. And I think it should kind of push us to switch gears, but that's maybe for later in the podcast.
Yeah, but I completely fully agree. And the point that you made about how this should be some kind of a wake-up call to politicians, to the system, to shift into another gear of climate policy. The fact that it hasn't been that has been exactly what's like angered me the most and hurt me the most, because one of the frameworks that I used to see this world through it was like, yeah, if it's just because the consequences aren't here yet, that's why no one's taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that completely fall away was like, there's no logical explanation aside from, profit over people, which is something that I really, it's to me, it's just really, really infuriating to see how so many people can be so set into a system that they don't question the bigger the issues at hand, when literally their world is falling out from under their feet. And I've always thought, if that happens, action will have to be taken, but apparently not. Yay.
Or not enough
Mm-hmm.
yet. To say this, the former US President Bill Clinton, he said in the 90s, it's the economy, stupid. So that's only that priority that politicians are focusing on, to fix on the economy and less on climate change, is so paradoxal when you see what else happening around the globe, because that same economy, where it's fueled by fossil fuel, is literally making the planet more dangerous for human beings, but also animal life, also plants. Even the oceans are becoming more with acid. So it's literally a whole entire ecosystem that is starting to collapse. One example is the Great Barrier Reef
in Australia.
In Australia. I mean, even the corals are so, let us say, attacked by the combine from the acids. It's contaminating. I was searching for the word. So if you think about that, just then you really have to be literally blind and stupid that you still want to continue with this economic module fueled by fossil fuel. If you, it's like you're selling a flamethrower. And you're testing it in your own house.
Yeah.
I mean,
but the economic, the quote you gave of Clinton is kind of interesting, because doing the research for this episode, I came across some articles, and in one of them they mentioned, or a journalist talking to a climate scientist mentioned, so many billions in property value are going to disappear due to coastal erosion and sea level rise. And I stepped away, or I looked away from the screen for a moment, and I was thinking, like, what person measures land lost in terms of property value? Like, areas get measured in terms of meters and square kilometers, and like, it's not, it's weird in and of itself, I think, in a certain way, that we measure it, or we try to convey the size of it in terms of property value, in terms of money, and we use money as a measurement unit in this case, instead of, I mean, even just like the amount of people that live on that land, it kind of says something about the standards or the default way of looking at things. I feel like that we use dollars instead of like the amount of people, or the just the surface area of it.
Yeah, it's like there's no value being put on anything that cannot be sold for like some amount of money, and yeah, it's infuriating. And also, just, if you're looking completely at like the economic point, having to deal with these climate catastrophes is costly, very, very much more costly than having to prevent them. And I think that's like a basic economic principle that a lot of politicians, policymakers, economists, lobbyists are ignoring and are choosing to not see. Because in the end, we'll all have to pay so much more if you want to measure it in what you have to pay. Simply, yeah, let's lean into their logic. It'll be so much worse if we let it like all play out, and these funds that'll have to be invested to prevent it will seem peanuts to what has to be invested to try to rebuild a society or rebuild or relocate so many people. And we'll have to deal with it. Definitely there will have to be climate adaptation. We already have to do that, but the scale of it will increase so much more, and we'll have to pay so much more money. So if any economists or politicians are listening, well, think about the money afterwards.
One concrete examples are insurance organizations. I read in the article that in 2020, around the globe, insurance organizations had to give out 123 billion, I thought euros or dollars, but still that huge amount of money only in 2020. Imagine that on a scale of a 10 years period or a 30-year period. I mean, that's a huge amount of money that's just been invested to the aftermath of the already damaged signs of homes or just the area where you live by climate change. I mean, think about that. I mean, riding with a diesel car or just of building new gas power plants or even phase out coal too slow seems so how do I say I'm looking for a word, innocent. But if you see the bigger picture, it's literally digging your own grave.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be very doom thinking about all of this, but that's literally what is happening. And it's the science. It's not a group of people who are predicting the apocalypse. It's just the science that's doing its work. Or even if environmental organizations are silent, science is still doing its work in the worse.
Even the scientists are basically getting a depression from their own work. This is from 2015. I can't imagine it has gone much better in the meantime. But studies have shown that a lot of scientists apparently experience what is called pre-traumatic stress, where basically they suffer from overwhelming senses of anger, panic, and obsessive intrusive thoughts that result from simply working every day to chart a planetary future that looks increasingly apocalyptic. So it's basically just constantly being exposed to this not so happy picture, to say the least. And as well, the unwillingness of most industrialized countries to truly take action on that sense. And it has also been, to a certain degree, sensed or diagnosed on some activists. Yeah, I'm not... we shouldn't self-diagnose, but the anger, fear, and and the intrusive thoughts of not being able to think about other things do seem a bit familiar to me.
Yeah, sounds familiar. Been there.
One student once said about my degree that if it was a student in psychology, and she said to me that if I ever want to study eco-technology, then I literally become depressed. And she is mostly right. Because
another way we deal with our problems, cynical laughter.
Yeah.
Try it.
Because not only that, we see in our degree solutions, but also the facts. I mean, and also the slow adaptation, the slow implementation of solutions. I mean, just for example, in Belgium, we are like 20 years daggering around about one energy source. It's literally pathetic to see. I mean, come on.
And it makes you, the same with the other stuff, it makes you fearful of what else is to, how are we ever going to deal with any of the other problems? And the list is long.
Yeah,
so many other things have to happen.
Too long.
And we can decide on a nuclear power plant. We can't decide on a stop on pouring concrete on half our territory. We can't agree on so many other things. And like, it's really fear-inducing to just watch the inability to decide on anything and to have anything happen. And that in combination with anger and also just the sadness of, for example, the coral reefs falling apart, it makes you start to wonder, like, on one hand, you're angry for what is... for how people are continuously pretending to do things and not to do things. You're fearful of what else has to happen and isn't happening yet. And then you are just wondering at some point, like, why you're fucking doing any of it, because the world keeps getting sadder and sadder with, like, species dying out and everything.
Yeah, to me, the basis of that, like, whole conundrum is you, as a climate activist, it's like your prerogative to not accept any of it. But that's the thing that makes it so hard to deal with, because you're concerned for the climate. So you take these things that you see in the news, in the media around you very seriously. You take it personally. You have a sort of an emotional connection. To me also, if I see giant areas of nature destroyed, it's almost like a part of me that's grieving. So but the first step that my psychologist always says to me is to accept what is and then move on. But that's my issue. I cannot accept this situation that we're in. I cannot accept what we're doing to our planet. And I cannot accept how you're gonna have to beep this out, but how fucking incapable
we don't beep stuff.
Okay. How fucking incapable our politicians, our policymakers, the people that we voted for to say are at taking care of us and the planet that we live on. And every time you see these little like debates about, oh, but we need to keep building houses and everyone can just put as much concrete as they want on their properties and everywhere, and without any thought being given to the climate and our world that we all need and we're gonna need for a long time. It makes you all the things that you said, that you feel frustrated, angry, but also you have no basis to deal with it, because my whole thing is I cannot accept this. But yeah, it's difficult. It's just, you have to find a way to kind of accept it and try to work it into your like view of the world to continue with it. But yeah, hit me up if anyone knows how to do that.
And what's frustrating me the most of all of this is that some politicians are saying, yes, but we can fix climate change by only technology. That I think to myself, no, that's just a sentence that you want to use in debates to win elections. But in reality, technology is just a piece of a puzzle, not the whole puzzle. I mean, it's the mix of changing behavior, changing, setting your priorities right,
Changing infrastructure.
changing infrastructure. I mean, it's a whole system that it's been built that has to be rethinked. And you can't just fix that by technology. Of course, there need to be renewable energy or some parts nuclear energy. There needs to be electric cars. We need to isolate our homes. So yes, of course, we all need that, but it's not the only thing that we have to do. I mean, you can have a whole fleet of electric cars, but if you have another flood, then those electric cars are pointless. I mean, you should focus on reinventing mobility as a service. I mean, that's also what I see in my degree. Do you know the term geoengineering? I mean, like
that's the idea of that. Well, it's an umbrella term for doing things like spreading aerosols to increase cloud
not only
cover,
that.
Right.
and other weird shit. Like I think at one point I saw somebody proposing to activate a volcano for some reason.
And stuff like building a whole like shield across the world and
Yeah.
Yeah, a giant mirror in
space.
Yeah.
That's what we are heading in science. I mean, there are literally scientists who are working on those solutions because they have no other choice. And I mean, if politicians really want to wait until we reached that level, then go ahead, but you don't gonna like it. I mean, there is a idea of a Dutch scientist that that wants to build a giant dam across the northeast coast of Scotland, and then connect it to Norwegian, just to protect the to protect Europe from rising sea levels. I mean, if we really want to wait as a society to that point that the sea level is rising, and you really want to build a dam, yeah, okay, go ahead. But like I mentioned, you're not gonna like that because it's a panic reaction that you're actually are doing. So
it's also not gonna work for all of the other 10,000 problems you're dealing with. It's not gonna work with the fires and with the floods from the rivers and everything.
Let me use the metaphor of the Titanic. We all knew the Titanic is sank because it didn't see the ice mountain at the right time. So we as society, as the planet, we are the Titanic, and the ice mountain is the point of no return. And we don't have that much time before we are hitting the ice mountain. I mean, if we really want to avoid that, so that we don't have collateral damage in whole society, then we really should shifting the backbone of everything, like fossil fuel, but also all the mechanism around it, like funding, like interest and all kind of that. I mean, to be concrete, shut down power plants that are working on fossil fuels, like ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. To me, the whole thing that like I don't remember the correct term for it, like geoengineering.
Geoengineering,
The whole
exactly.
thing that like geoengineering and trying to move society to Mars, and these, to me, they seem idiotic climate measures are yeah, the fact that we are putting all our hopes on stuff like that is living in this pretend world where we can just keep going the way we have been doing for a long time. And that's why they want to go to whatever lengths to consider to try to keep it the way it is, but just somewhere else, or just build a dam for it. And like, I don't know if you know this meme of like a vat of water, and then when someone puts a piece of plastic on it, it is like, oh, it's fixed. It's that exactly to me. And what angers me most is that these pretend, or these like quick fixes, they are very, very costly. Like trying to go to Mars and investing all your money, and maybe we could all live there one day, or trying to build a fucking shield around the world, or I don't know what that was exactly, but it's just a lot of money is going into places where it's not being used yet, or where we would never have to get to that point if we just invested it in the right places, in the right people, and the right ways to like the things that you proposed. Yeah, just in the thing that's right in front of us, and not in like this whatever down the road issues we might come into. Yeah.
We as prominent scientists like Michio Kaku like to spread and like to promote, and he's completely correct. We are becoming slowly a planetary civilization. We have the Olympic Games, and soccer being like
United Nations.
We have the United Nations, we have the internet, we have all these global systems, global sports, we have global politics, we have global communications. And that's wonderful, but we're not there yet, because a planetary civilization also can harvest all the energy it receives on a planet, and we're not there yet. Fossil fuels, I need to get rid of those. And second of all, it's good to have that vision and to have that future, because I think it definitely makes us a bit more optimist. But it can blind us for what we need to do to get there.
Because we need like a planetary scale solution right
now.
Maybe that is why the aliens are not visiting us, because we are digging our own grave with fossil
they're just
fuels.
looking at us being like stupid.
They're not. You haven't reached our level yet.
I remember the words of André Kuipers, a Dutch astronaut, when he was in the International Space Station for 6 months. The first thing that one of the first thing that he did was to flow into the window when they see planet Earth from out of space. And he said, our planet Earth is so unique that it's one of the few, or may not the only place where life actually exists. I mean, if you really think about that, at this time, no other life is been known than only what we know on planet Earth. I mean, yes, of course, you have exoplanets, you have planets that might look like Earth, but imagine planet Earth is everything that it has to that where life can exist. I mean, think about that. If we go to Mars, which I'm not against to, because eventually in time we will become interplanetary, we will have to terraform that planet, and that process will take like more than 100 years. I mean, the atmosphere has to change. cities has to be built. I mean, think about that. And we have already a planet with all things that humans, animals, and plant life can provide. I mean, we have oxygen, we have water, we have food, and that's just throwing away or even destroying it by greed and power is just insane. I mean, we should be more grateful for this planet because we already have one. There's no planet B yet. And do you really want that humanity just flew to another planet so they can start a new society then? I mean, it's just ridiculous if you see it. We can temper and eventually avoid more climate change, but we have to choose to do that. I mean, do you really want to live in spacesuits and all for the rest of our lives? I don't. I mean, I'm glad that I can just breathe oxygen from here.
So let's think happy thoughts.
Yeah, but also what you said, we have to be more grateful. To me, that's a general like gratitude practice is something that has helped my mental health tremendously and also has helped me just to see life through a less pessimistic lens, I suppose, or just like if we want to keep going as activists, it's very important that we also appreciate and our planet and spend time with it. And for example, if you see a beautiful sunset or sunrise, take a moment for yourself to be grateful about what there is and the beauty that has been bestowed upon us to defend or something like that. And it gives you like a spark to keep going because you're like, the world is so awesome. So
one of the positive things about the lockdowns that we have is that people reimagined nature again. I mean, in my own neighborhood, there is a landscape that we call the Hamburgse Meerse. And I literally see during the first two lockdowns that people are massively walking through there, taking pictures, taking picnics. And I think to myself, what the hell happened before that? I mean, before I didn't see that many people, but during the lockdowns, everybody was like, "Oh, let's go into our nature and all." And I really hope that will stay because that's the value about it. I mean, if you really like nature, then you have to protect it. I mean, don't destroy the thing that you like.
But I think it's also
what you love. I mean,
it's also people learning to get in contact with that, and for others or from at least for the activists and the most active people in society to get other people along to do that and to organize things like picnics and gatherings in those green spaces so people can experience and learn to appreciate them, and maybe help other people free time in order to do that, because not everyone is as privileged to have free time
or access to nature
because, well, that's one of the problems we're dealing with. Because also one of the other things that I feel always makes me feel a little bit better is being in contact with other people that understand the problem and that want to do something about it, which is why I invited you two here.
Yes, definitely. But that
so
helps.
Thank you for coming. But
also just like sharing what you're going through, because I had been like feeling completely like weird and I didn't know how, with everything that was happening on like a climate level, I was just like very pessimistic, and I said like a few things to Tom, and he was like, but you're doing this, and he like shed stuff in a different light for me, and that really helps. There's just like the little things, so keep doing that.
What also helps is making fun. I mean, it doesn't always have to be heavy and depressed. It can also be fun. For example, if you invite a group of friends and you're walking through your own neighborhoods and you see some trash laying on the ground, to just pick that up and collect it together, then it gives you a good feeling that you're actually caring about nature. I mean,
in a sense of like accomplishment.
Yeah, of course. And it's just the little things, but it makes you really happy about that.
I will say I was always a skeptic of cleaning up trash because I didn't think that was the job of the activist. But
it's fun.
Yes, my mind has changed since I did it at the...
How so? Elaborate.
Since I did it once, and it was one fun to sit in a... Okay, to be fair, this was in a kayak. This was in a canoe. This was in a little boat on a canal. But it was fun to talk with a person just while doing it, and a lot of people that came by said thank you and were grateful for it. So in that sense, it is useful, and it is also useful for useful as one, marketing. I'm not gonna lie about that, and two, useful for yourself, just to do a quiet, nice activity.
Yeah.
In that sense, I think it's a positive
kind of
thing.
like a regenerative practice. Like you're doing it, you're not purposefully doing it for these like to have better connections with the people around you, but you're there in a setting that's why I think a lot of people have been dealing with climate activism completely differently and have been struggling with it more through the Corona crisis, COVID crisis. Through the crisis, because you could only organize online. Only now, just like a few things have been picking up again for me, but still, a lot of it is still online, and all these little like things that are very much usually casual but also the backbone of a movement, because you see people, you talk to people, you exchange with people, you do stuff where you feel like, we made a difference together. There's this whole culture that we have been missing out on. That's been just, if then you're faced with a pandemic and also suddenly a lot of effects of the climate crisis in your own area, is just even more isolating. And I think that's one of the strengths and one of the things that we have to come back to as climate activists, to be more, just physically with each other all the time, not all the time, but a lot more, and do even little activities, even like playing games together or going drinking, or just doing what normal people do in life, but also be plotting the revolution at the same time, because important. But
no,
social media is no replacement for real life organizing people.
Social media.
I have to remind myself of that as well.
Yeah, same. You're like, oh yeah, I did a Zoom call. It was fine. I seen this person, but no,
it's not how it works.
And of course, climate action doesn't mean that we have to lock down our whole society. It's just that we have to rebuild our whole society, like fundamentally. I mean, can you imagine that some countries doesn't have a choice that's just to polluting their air because they want to get out of poverty? It's just insane. But of course we need to think positive, because a revolution is built on hope. Little Star Wars reference.
Yeah, but there is truth in that. Art often inspires things like that, and inspires political
music,
thought.
films.
And I think it's not as much as focusing on the shit these countries are polluting, and focusing a bit more on the, okay, how can we make sure that they don't have to do that anymore? Well, what if we, and feel free to be radical in it. I think, what if we basically just gave them all the technology and gave them, and like maybe I'm a bit nostalgic for the 20th century, but basically just send like 1,000 workers on a fucking boat to another country and tell them, and ask that country, what do you need in terms of infrastructure, and give it to them for once.
So we have the internet.
Yeah, but also
Yeah, but that, I mean, in terms of physical
yeah, of course.
build.
Of course,
But
also,
yeah, share information.
about just for us
Free.
activists. Yeah, go ahead.
No.
No, what you said that reminded me of also a point I think Tom made a few days ago, because you said to think positive, and I think that's really important. But also, the backbone, our revolution, so to say. There's not really a revolution yet, but a movement is built on people, and I think the most revolutionary thing that you can do is to invest in yourself and the people around you, and allow yourself to feel shit for a bit and to dwell on it and to work through it, instead of thinking, oh, it's fine, I'll just go on to the next thing, which is what I did for a long time. And I was very close to like a little baby burnout. But you just need to sometimes not be pushing yourself to be making the most impact, because the most impact you can make is when you're at your best and when you're not depressed and not suffering from climate anxiety. So I think it's like something that we as activists have to do as well, just invest so much more in ourselves and be like, yeah, I have some issues, so I might just go to a psychologist if that's, of course, within your reach and you can afford that, stuff like that. But yeah, also do these little things with the people around you. It's so much more effective than just keep going on your own and fixing the next issue and researching this and that and this action here and that action there, which I think is what we've all been doing, while a bit like missing out on the important regenerative like parts of that. So that's my how do you say it? My the thing that switched to my brain, epiphany. That was an epiphany that I had last year, that in order to be able to take care of the climate and take care of the people around me, I have to take care of myself more. And that's what I want to say.
Self-care is good.
Yeah, and just
I can recommend it everybody.
If you're feeling stuff and if you're feeling like you're not having positive thoughts, that's also fine. It's what it is. And what are you going to do about it for yourself?
It's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
Definitely.
I mean,
sorry, I interrupted your point.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
No, but that's true. And I mean, learn from the values that you are trying to spread or trying to defend. Like, sustainability also counts for you, counts for your organization and your network. The ability to withstand a crisis or a big impact also, holds for you and your organization. If something big and terrible happens, talk with each other about it, deal with it. And sometimes, listen to your feelings. For example, organizing a march and screaming at the politicians is great. It's cathartic. It's catharsis in a certain way. It helps relieve tension. But, if you keep getting angry from seeing that the politicians don't do anything or basically have committed to waiting till the very last moment and are just saying, this is our form of action, we'll wait till 2049 and then we'll do all the things at once, and then maybe your feeling is right and you should, break with them and find other ways to build your trust.
Like becoming a politician yourself. I mean,
or finding people in your community that you trust. That's how AOC got in power.
True.
That was basically the public being like, we don't like any of these candidates, so we're going to find people we like and ask them to go.
And also, if you're not feeling okay and if you feel like you're close to maybe not burning out, but you feel like I haven't been taking care of myself properly, I think it's something that as a climate experience, climate activists, we experience maybe some guilt if we're not doing a lot of things all the time, or if we haven't been working on some projects or 10 things at the same time. And it's completely okay to also be like, yeah, no, I cannot do anything at this point for myself, or I have to take a break and just let that be, because I've been struggling with that. I've had a long year of breaks and maybe not doing as much as I could do, and it's taken a toll on me because I feel like I haven't been able to contribute as much as I wanted to. But at the same time, if I was pushing myself even further, maybe I wouldn't have been able to get back at it any time again. So just, yeah, find other ways to contribute, or just keep, you're contributing if you're working on yourself as well, because you're important to our plans.
I remember that like all around the globe, people are aware of the climate crisis. So you're not alone in this. You never walk alone in this. So 79% of all people are aware of this. Yeah. And like Kato and Tom said, reach out to each other, and because it's more fun to do climate actions with as many people than alone. I mean,
yeah, I think
also radical individualism is dead.
True. I think we're gonna have a lot of cool, like, inspirational quotes from this episode. I mean,
Keenan
someone
can
wants
fish
to
those
make,
out when he's back.
Does someone want to make like a word cloud or something, or like quotes meme?
We'll use that as a thumbnail for the video on YouTube.
Yes, definitely.
But I guess that's a good place to end. And we'll maybe go drink something and do the things we just told other people to do.
And not go home and lie in my bed and watch Netflix. Nope.
No, the sun is still shining for the moment. So,
but that's also okay if you want to watch Netflix.
True, but I have been doing it for way too long.
It's good that you know that of yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, the sun is out. It's a nice weather, so go outside and call your mom and tell her you love her or something like that.
And hug each other more, because that's cute.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Kato. Thank you, Dorian. And thank you, guys, for listening. See you next week with another podcast episode. Bye-bye.